All of the gameplay in the background of these videos are side missions from Pandora and Promethea played on true Vault Hunter mode, which means that there will be no spoilers for the game's story. So you're pretty set on playing Flak, or you haven't quite decided yet and you're just wondering what they are like and if they're going to be worth it for you. You came to the right video. We're going to go a little bit more in depth into Flak, their abilities, their pets, but most importantly the skill trees and the general playstyles that you should expect, but we'll also show some actual gameplay of each of the skill trees as they're being used. So Hunter, Stalker and Master gameplay, just so you can see the general playstyles and how they work. Flak is the sharpshooter of Borderlands 3. All of their skill trees focus on dealing hard-hitting damage per shot. If you want to run with a sniper, Jacob's revolver, or just run at people with shotguns in the face, then they are a great option. But what of course makes Flak so special are their pets. Each of the skill trees that Flak has, Hunter, Stalker and Master, each have a specific pet that you can choose from. Each of these pets also provide passives. With the Spider Ant on screen, when you have it out it regens health for you. You have the Jabber in the Stalker tree, which increases your movement speed. And you have the Skag in the Master tree, which increases your overall damage by a certain amount. You can spec into certain areas to make the passives of the pets a lot stronger, but they're generally what you're going to expect running each of them. They each also have their own attack commands. The Spider Ant will charge at enemies that you flag by holding down the action button. The Jabber will throw a radiation barrel, and the Skag will vomit up some corrosive spit, I guess it would be. These pets are out all the time. You don't need to really summon them. They can get downed and they can die, in which case they go down on a 1 minute cooldown if you fail to res them. You can res them, and if you spec for it in the skill trees, they can res you. But like I said, each of Flak's pets is connected to the skill trees that they're in. This is important because as you invest into each of the skill trees that we've mentioned, you unlock stronger versions of those animals on the right hand side as you're seeing. They provide more utility other than the passives that we've mentioned, and could also do a little bit more. For example, going back to the Hunter tree and the Spider Ant, you can unlock the Scorcher, which gives you regenerative health and elemental resistance. Its attack command, the Scorcher will still charge at enemies. Or as you go further into the Hunter tree, you can unlock the Countess, which gives you regen health and also damage reduction by a flat amount. When you issue an attack command, the Countess will burrow under the ground and then emerge dealing corrosive damage in an area like you're seeing on screen. For the Stalker tree with the Jabber, the more you invest into that, you will unlock the Beefcake Jabber, which will drop its pistol for a shotgun, increase your movement speed and also your maximum health. When you issue an attack command, the Beefcake will summon a melee weapon to deliver a powerful attack that knocks enemies back. Go a little bit further and you will unlock the Gunslinger, which will have an SMG, will increase your movement speed and also your critical hit damage. When you issue an attack command, the Gunslinger equips a rocket launcher to attack the target. And finally, the Skag in the Master tree. Further you go down, you will unlock the Great Horned Skag, which increases your damage as a whole and also your gun damage. When you issue an attack command, the Great Horned Skag will charge at enemies and knock them up into the air. The final pet in the Master tree is the Iridian Skag, which improves your damage and fire rate, and when you issue an attack command, they create a singularity that pulls enemies towards them. So even though these pets are just AI, they still provide a lot of utility in what they do and also the passives that they have. It's worth bearing in mind just in case you want to focus on a specific pet. Each of them could do various things and some are better than others in specific areas. But that's not all that Flak has access to. They also have 3 abilities each found in the skill trees that we mentioned. You can mix and match whichever talent trees, pets and abilities that you want, but I would definitely line up the abilities and pets that you're using with the skill tree that you're investing points into, if that makes sense. Because you miss out on augments, much like the pets that we just highlighted. Going over the abilities back to Hunter, you have Rack Attack, which sends forwards 2 racks to dive bomb enemies. It has multiple charges and is on a relatively low cooldown, which you could decrease even more by speccing into it. The Stalker tree, you have Fadeaway, which is very similar to Zero's ability in Borderlands 2. You turn invisible, which increases your movement speed and health regen whilst you're in this cloaked state. And you can fire 3 shots, then you're decloaked. Each of those shots will automatically deal critical hits, no matter where you hit the target, in the head, on the butt, doesn't matter. It does have a fairly long cooldown, however. And finally, Gamma Burst, you create a rift at a target location, teleporting your pet through the rift, dealing radiation damage to nearby enemies. The pet also becomes irradiated, or enraged basically, growing in size, dealing bonus radiation damage when it attacks. You can also use this to revive your pet, but it does double the cooldown to a minute from 30 seconds, so be careful of that. I guess. Most of this stuff we've gone over already in the which Vault Hunter should you pick video, but this is where we can get into more specifics. Much like your pets, as you invest into the skill trees that these abilities are in, you unlock augments, which are found on the left hand side. These can add passives to your abilities, such as health regen when you use them, can change the element of the ability from fire racks to ice racks if you want to do some frost damage, or just how the abilities work entirely. Flak also has the advantage of being able to equip 2 augments per ability, which adds a lot of flexibility, but augments can only be equipped to their specific ability. A quick example of this is Rack Attack, where you have an augment that gives you an extra charge of the ability, so instead of 2 you have 3, but this only works for Rack Attack. You can't gain an extra charge of Fade Away or Gamma Burst. That might seem really obvious to go over, but I want it to be 100% clear, as some of the other Vault Hunters augments do cross over to different abilities. It's not the case for Flak though. Each of the abilities has 4 augments, and you can choose 2 and mix and match whichever ones that you want. The first is Rack Open a Cold One, where you convert the rack's fire damage to cryo damage, as I just mentioned. Next up is Falconer's Feast. When you damage an enemy, a portion of Flak's health is restored, which is good at keeping yourself alive. Flock and Load, Flak sends forwards 2 additional racks, making it 4 in total. And finally Accelerate, which gives you an additional charge, but it does increase the cooldown rate, so it's good in those burst fire situations. For Fade Away, the first one is Gorillas in the Mist. Fade Away no longer ends after Flak's 3 attacks, but you have reduced critical hit damage, and Fade Away duration is reduced. Not My Circus follows. After Fade Away ends, Flak's pets will taunt, drawing the attention of all the enemies in a huge radius. The pet also gains powerful damage reduction. Until You Are Dead, the health regen and movement speed of Fade Away persists for a short time after the skill has ended. Unblinking Eye, successive hits on the same target increases Flak's critical damage per hit. Unblinking Eye resets every 3 hit, so great for boss battles. For the Master Tree and Gamma Burst, the first one is Atomic Aroma. While Gamma Burst is active, Flak's pets are surrounded by radiation aura, constantly dealing damage to all nearby enemies. Empathic Rage, for the duration of Gamma Burst, damage dealt by Flak is increased by 20%, good for burst phases. Endurance, when Flak or the pet kills an enemy whilst Gamma Burst is active, the duration of Gamma Burst is extended and the pet's damage is increased. This stacks up to 5 times. And finally Burst Aid, after using Gamma Burst, a rift remains open for the duration of the skill, and it heals you for 20% of your max health per second when you stand near it, which is a lot of fun to use, as you can imagine. Being able to choose 2 of the 4 augments per ability means that you can build for damage, but also have a little bit of health regen on the side, or just double down in certain areas of utility, skill duration, those kind of areas. So one of the best things about Flak is you have a lot of flexibility to play however you want, but each of the skill trees, as you invest into them, does have its weaknesses that you want to bear in mind before you go full hunter, crit damage Flak. You need to be wary of these things that I wanted to mention. I just mentioned the Hunter tree, so let's go over that in a little bit more detail. This is a tree all based around doing hit and crit damage, firing extra projectiles per shot, and being fairly stationary as a whole. I will say that the gameplay in the background isn't the best. A lot of these enemies are pretty tough at a high difficulty, but I also don't have a really good Jacob's weapon, like a sniper rifle, that I can use to do a lot of damage. But I can promise you, when you do have those good weapons, the Hunter tree is very strong. But this is great if you want to run a high fidelity weapon such as a sniper rifle or a really good revolver. Those guns that fire slow maybe don't have a lot of ammo in their magazine, but they very much hit hard. If you're a Jacobs fan and you want to run that, then this is a tree that you definitely want to go down. The capstone is Megavore, gaining a chance to score a critical hit no matter where you hit the enemy, so you don't need to worry about hitting headshots all the time. Gives you a little bit more freedom, but also a lot of damage too. I mentioned the rack augment earlier that restores a bit of your health every time it does damage, which is nice for regen, keeping yourself alive. It means that you aren't going pure DPS in leveling, for example, because of course you're going to be taking a lot of damage, especially if you're playing solo, that you won't have any way to regen your health. Rack Attack also is a nice ranged ability. Some of the others are a bit too close quarters, so if you're fighting some enemies that are sniping you from a distance, or a boss that's sort of away from the map, like Bunker as an example, not that Bunker's in the game, but those kind of bosses, Rack Attack is really good because it homes in on people and you don't really need to worry about it once you send them out. There's a lot of nice ranged options for Flak, but that does mean in a lot of cases you can be quite immobile. Because you're not investing a lot of skill points into your pet, they don't really do too much. And I found that the Spider Ant died the most out of all the pets because you're not building for their damage reduction or their regen in health. They're just the most straightforward version of the pet, right? So they can get downed a lot, and you trying to go and res them in certain situations just will get you killed, which is kind of annoying. The ability isn't as impactful as the other two too. Rack Attack is good, but because it's on such a low cooldown, it doesn't have the sense of a big ultimate ability like Fade Away and Gamma Burst do. Some might prefer another ability that you could use pretty much whenever you want, as opposed to an ability where you'll use it and then you'll wait for it to come off cooldown again. You become a bit reliant on it, but Rack Attack is nice and flexible no matter what you're doing. This is the max DPS tree if you want to use hard hitting weapons, but you do miss out a lot when it comes to survivability and keeping yourself alive, so just be wary of that, especially if you're playing on your own. You can be a bit reliant on certain weapons, but I think that's really the case across the board for Flak, to be fair. The Stalker tree is actually a lot of fun. The more that I played it, the more that I really like this playstyle. Where the Hunter tree kinda wants to stay stationary, firing from a distance, this tree has a lot of focus on moving around to keep yourself alive, but also hits hard when you stood still. This is a great skill tree for leveling, on the move, boss battles, proving grounds. All those areas is where I really enjoyed Stalker the most. You play like a World of Warcraft rogue, that's kinda how it feels. This is the one that's very similar to Zero, obviously because it has an ability that is basically the same as Zero's, but you also have some nice synergy with doing damage with your pet. This is also the tree that has the skill that enables your pet to revive you when you go down. There are elements of you wanting to stay still. For example, you have turn tail and run. When you're stationary, you gain gun damage and fire rate, but the flip side is when you're moving, you regenerate health and gain damage reduction. So it's this nice stop-start playstyle like you're seeing on screen, which makes it tremendous for leveling. I really enjoyed playing this tree every time that I honed in on it. The capstone is the power inside. Flak and Flak's pets gain increased damage when Flak activates his action skill. When you're at full health, this is doubled too. And you can spec the Fade Away ability to have a much lower cooldown. And like we went over with the augments, there's a lot of flexibility with what you can do with it. I'd say it's really good for leveling because it pairs well with all the weapon types. Like I mentioned, shotguns, but also assault rifles, SMGs. Whatever you get your hands on, you can make it work in this tree. It's a very balanced playstyle, and I'd say it's good for all occasions. There are a few cons, however, not many though. The pet again feels like it doesn't really add much. It adds a little bit more than the Spider Ant, but the Jabba can also get downed quite a bit. When it comes to elemental options, this is a problem for Flak across the board, but you really don't have much. You can't do fire damage or ice damage or anything like that, so if an armored target or a target with shield comes along, you have to rely on having elemental weapons to make up for it, which more often than not don't bode well in Flak's arms. And whilst there is a lot of regen options, if you get hit hard by stuff, you gotta be careful. There's no way to instantly burst up your health regen like you have in Hunter with the rack attacks. So it's a case of trying to get out the way of stuff, which makes it a little bit brittle. This is the good across the board skill tree for Flak. Doesn't do as much damage as Hunter, but it does more than the Master tree. It doesn't have as much damage mitigation or regen as Master, but it has more than the Hunter tree, if that makes sense. But because it's high in movement, it's good in boss battles where you need to sort of stealth away for certain situations, and also good in the proving grounds because you're moving around very quickly. Finally, we have the Master tree. This is based around you and your pet putting out consistent damage whilst also providing damage reduction and healing. For Flak personally, this is the worst DPS tree out of the other three. But of course you have your pet, which you do spec a lot more into, which improves how effective they are as a whole. Some gameplay again on screen of the Master tree at work. I go down more than the pet does in this case. They're very tanky, they can do a lot of damage, and they can just look out for themselves. This is a really good tree if you're moving into true Vault Hunter playthroughs or going into certain difficult mayhem modes, where you kind of want to dip your toe in to see how much you can really take in regards to damage and how much you could dish out. It's a really good one for those situations where you're not really sure how it's going to be, such as a raid boss. You have a lot of backup options, but you lose damage that you could do as a whole. The Gamma Burst ability is really cool. Like I showed you on screen, you have the Burst Aid Healing Rift, which is really good, both for solo play and group play. You become more of a supportive character when you go down this tree. The other thing I don't really like about it is the Capstone Dominance, where if you melee a target, you mind control them for a while, up until the duration runs out, which is 12 seconds, or until the character dies. It's pretty good, but it's not as good as the other ones. So if I was to rate them in a general sense, you have the Hunter tree, which is all about doing damage, but you don't have much like defensive capabilities, I guess it would be. Master is the opposite. You have a lot of defensive capabilities. Your pet is also great in a pinch, but you don't do as much damage. The Stalker tree is a more mobile playstyle, but it's very much in between the damage and the defensive options that you have. So depending on what you want to play, affects what skill tree that you want to go into. And of course, once you get to sort of level 32 or whatever it is, you can invest into 2 skill trees at once. So it's not really a thing to worry about. Once I get to level 50 with Flak, we can talk a little bit more about the sort of builds that you might want to run. But I would definitely say for leveling, don't go down the hunter tree too much to begin with. You want to keep yourself alive. If you're dead, you're not doing any damage. So we've gone over quite a lot in this video, really deep diving into the abilities, the augments, the variations that you can run, and the general playstyles of each of the skill trees. This is the list of stuff that you need to really watch out for if you plan to play Flak. Elemental effects. You don't have much ability wise or talent wise to be flexible here, not in comparison to Zane or Amara that could do a lot more. It means that you have to pick up Maliwan weapons or other elemental weapons which just on average don't deal as much damage as a Jacob's weapon, which I would say are Flak's preferred weapon type, or just high hitting kinetic weapons in general. Your pets can be useless and rather frustrating. In boss battles, they can often just sit there and do nothing because they can't reach the boss, because it's flying around like Bunker, or they just get downed a lot. They can't take a lot of those high DPS situations because they're not moving out the way of stuff, you know? Flak can be very brittle or immobile depending on how you spec. You need to be very careful of what your pitfalls are and plan accordingly. You could also be very reliant on gear. Say you're going down the hunter tree, you want a really good weapon that goes with your playstyle. If you don't have a very good gun, it's going to take a while to kill certain things as Flak, especially if it's not a really good sniper rifle or a shotgun or a revolver as an example. Another thing that I wanted to mention is anointed gear for Flak, which is the gear that has certain passives to do with your abilities. From what I've seen, are not as good as the other ones. They're not as, oh my god, this is actually really ridiculous and broken, but I haven't seen them all yet, so that might change, especially as we get into the higher tiers. But if you're still set on Flak, you have all of these things to enjoy. You have a pet, which will make solo play less lonely, and it's always great to have an extra DPS that is a lot better than half the people I play Borderlands with. They can offer stuff in solo play or co-op, as a healer, as an outright damage person, as a rogue going in the background, going nothing personal kid, and shotgunning people in the face before they even realize. Each of the 3 skill trees offer very different playstyles, which is more flexible than most people gave Flak credit for. Because of that, they are great in Proving Grounds, Circle of Slaughter, Mayhem mode, normal questing, boss battles, you name it, Flak is good at it. Finally, ProZD did an excellent job voice acting them. Really would recommend it, there's a lot of funny stuff in there, and Flak is just such a badass character. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them. Thanks for watching and see you soon.